So it could be that I internalize within a relationship that's not going as well as it could, that perhaps I'm failing the other person because I'm not meeting the expectation they set forth, when the real problem could be that there's a hole within me because I am trying to live an expectation that I set myself because the world says I should, that I don't even fully believe in. Hello, friends. I'm Matthew Pilling, Chief Overthinker with a Pilling Perspective. And today we're going to overthink a little bit about expectations. A quote here from Stephen R. Covey. He says, "The cause of almost all relationship difficulties is rooted in conflicting or ambiguous expectations." And he is spot on that. It is amazing how often, if people will figure out together what it is that they expect or hope for from a situation, they'll find before jumping into the situation that they're not on the same page. And that leaves them two options. They can either figure out what is a common ground that they can come to, or do we need to part ways and figure something else out? I was talking with a really good friend recently, and this friend is entering into a relationship where there are all sorts of the boxes are checked, all sorts of things that are exactly how you would want them to be. But there's still a bit of a hesitation. And as we were discussing some of it, it became evident that there are a few key areas where either expectations are in conflict, or like Covey said, they're ambiguous, they're undefined. They don't completely know what they actually expect from the relationship, and therefore they can't really in advance say, yes, this will meet my needs, or no, it won't, because they haven't defined their needs. And there are all sorts of things in management and leadership that talk about managing and defining expectations. And that's important. That's very important. We can't expect to hold people to a standard that we haven't clearly communicated to them. We can't be frustrated with a situation not turning out a certain way when we haven't completely decided ourselves how we hope that it will turn out. And I mean, Covey talked a ton about starting with the end in mind. If you don't know what end you really want, it can be hard to step in and feel fulfilled by a scenario because your brain doesn't even know what it's looking for. Your heart, your soul don't completely know what they're looking for. Or maybe better said, they do know what they're looking for, but you don't know what they're looking for. And so even though there are feelings of fun and there are feelings of goodness that are coming from whatever the new venture is, there's still a hole. There's still a problem where things aren't completely gelling the way they should. And in talking with this friend a little further about it, we realized not only is it important to figure out what those expectations are, but really to figure out what should those expectations be. And I use the word should cautiously because it's really easy to apply the world's view and say, well, a relationship should this and a relationship should that. And there are therapists out there that have studied this. There are psychologists out there who have studied this, who will be able to very clearly say if a relationship isn't giving certain things, it's not going to work. And I don't want to disagree with them. I don't want to step on any of what they're saying. But what I do think is sometimes missing, how I do think some people misapply the idea of managing expectations, is that they go in carrying expectations because of habit or tradition rather than because of desired outcome. And sometimes habit and tradition can be very counter to desired outcome. And the friend and I talked for a little bit, and it really became evident that there were some ideas being applied to the potential relationship that were simply there because that's what everybody does, or that were simply there because that's what we've been taught ideal looks like. But as the friend talked through some of it, it became obvious that some of those things didn't matter to them. And so they had to question, why am I forcing something? Why am I standing my ground on points that don't actually matter to me? Why am I helping the other person feel a certain way if that feeling isn't productive and it's not for something I even care about? And in searching through a few different Covey quotes to get the last one correct, I actually found another quote where he's already succinctly said everything I'm saying here. He says, frustration is a function of our expectations, and our expectations are often a reflection of the social mirror rather than our own values and priorities. And that just screams to me that we need to be clear with our own selves what we actually desire from a relationship, whether that relationship is an intimate relationship, whether it's a family relationship, a parent and a child, for example, whether it's a friendship, a business relationship or partnership, whatever relationship we're looking at. And I talk about new relationships. It can also be existing relationships. I think the frustrations that we feel, or potentially the frustrations that we could avoid, are rooted completely in either not being clear on our expectations or in not even having defined them. And that isn't saying let's make sure the other person can clearly articulate them first. Yes, we do need to share them. We do need to be able to find common ground on them. If I'm imposing on someone something that matters to me but to them feels extreme, it's going to cause problems. It's going to cause frustration. But if I can base my expectations in, like Covey said, my values and priorities, rather than in the social mirror, I will come into a relationship showing up more fully from the get-go. I think sometimes when a relationship doesn't work, it's easy to internalize that and feel like perhaps I'm not doing enough to meet their expectations and they're not doing enough to meet my expectations. If we're carrying baggage, worldly baggage, if we are trying to set expectations that are based on what the world says our expectations should be, instead of looking at what really matters to us, we aren't even showing up completely in the relationship in the first place because we are trying to live a false belief. We're trying to fulfill something that we don't even completely connect with or feel. And so if I am trying to live a belief that I don't actually hold in my heart, it's not going to be successful. It's not going to bring feelings of accomplishment. And so it could be that I internalize within a relationship that's not going as well as it could, that perhaps I'm failing the other person because I'm not meeting the expectation they set forth, when the real problem could be that there's a hole within me because I am trying to live an expectation that I set myself because the world says I should, that I don't even fully believe in. And because I don't fully believe in it, I don't fully live it. And there's a discrepancy there where our brain and our heart recognize that we aren't living what we believe. And I've talked about that in other videos, that we can't completely show up in relationships when we aren't living what we believe. And so before we really try to fix a relationship, what we have to do is figure out, what are my values? What are my priorities? And do the expectations that are often simply superimposed on a relationship even match those priorities and values? If they do, are they the most effective way to match them, or are there possibly better ways? And the less rigid we can be in applying those expectations, the more flexible we can be, the easier it will be to find the boundaries of a relationship. There are a lot of people in the self-help industry right now who are talking about boundaries, and they are important. Absolutely. We need to understand how and when to say no, how and when to tell someone they've gone too far or they're taking too much. That is critical. But those also have to be based in my values and my priorities rather than just what people tell me they should be based in. I think the overall thought here is that the more clearly you can define yourself, the more you know yourself, the easier it will be to then show up in a relationship and put those boundaries in place and have expectations that actually grow and strengthen the relationship rather than create walls and create barriers that prevent us from connecting. I hope this idea is helpful. I think there's a lot more that can be studied into it. But yeah, thank you for being here. As always, like, share, and we'll see you next time.